My parents maxed out my gold card for my sister's lavish luxury trip, but when they returned, what I'd done left them speechless and homeless. My name is Olivia. I'm 29 years old and work in the creative department of a software company in Austin, Texas. From the outside, it might seem like I have a stable job, decent income, and a worry-free life, but reality couldn't be more different. Everything started a little over a year ago when my father's construction company suddenly went bankrupt. He had once been the pride of our family, a self-made man who built everything from scratch. But after just a few phone calls and a court press conference, everything collapsed. We lost nearly everything. I had to leave my quiet little apartment in the city and move back in with my parents and my younger sister, Savannah, 26, at their suburban home in Round Rock. Since returning, I've had no personal space, no real time for myself. But the worst part was I became the sole provider for the entire family. Every morning, I wake up at 6 a.m., drive nearly an hour to the office. After 8 hours of battling deadlines and difficult clients, I return to a suffocating house where every single expense, big or small, falls on me. Once I suggested, what if I switched to remote work to save on gas and help more with the house? My mother looked at me like I had suggested something absurd. Think about it. Who else in this house can bring in money if not you? That sentence lodged itself deep in my mind, not because it was harsh, but because it was true. And worse, no one in the house saw a problem with me carrying everything alone. Savannah, meanwhile, acted like the world hadn't changed at all. She used to study fashion in California, but dropped out halfway because the environment didn't suit her. Since I came back, I haven't seen her take a single serious job, just endless scrolling online and posting filtered selfies with meaningless captions. Yet, in my parents' eyes, Savannah was sensitive, delicate, someone who needs to be protected. And me? I was the one who's strong, capable, doesn't need anyone's help. The first month, I sent home $2,500 for groceries, utilities, insurance, medication for Dad, and even Savannah's accidental charge for luxury skincare. I thought I was helping during a hard time, but by the second month, that number became $3,000, then crept up to nearly $4,200 a month, excluding random extras. I started to feel a lump in my throat every payday. I tried bringing up financial sharing, suggested that Savannah could get a part-time job at the cafe nearby. My mom's immediate reaction was a shocked look. She just went through a tough emotional phase. You can't throw her out into the world like that. I scoffed, unable to hide the sarcasm. Well, I just went through a tough emotional phase too, when I had to pay rent for this entire house. Mom, my father said nothing, but I knew he heard every word. I still remember that night clearly. A sweltering summer evening, the air conditioner groaning like it was protesting, both the heat and the tension in the house. I stepped through the door exhausted and found my mom already at the dining table, chin resting on her hand, glancing at me with a strange look. "You're just in time," she said, voice calm but off. "Savannah wants king crab and Wagyu beef this week." I looked it up. Not that expensive. I thought I misheard her. "You mean I'm supposed to pay for that?" I asked, trying to stay calm. She raised her eyebrows, gave a slight smile like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're the only one in the house with a usable credit card." Savannah sat across the table, tapping on her phone, not even looking up. "I just need to eat well to recharge. I've been so drained this whole week." I swallowed my frustration. Drained from what? "You don't work." Savannah let out an exaggerated sigh as if I were the one being dramatic. "You just don't get it. Mental fatigue is a thing." "Okay." My mom immediately jumped to her defense. "Olivia, you need to be more understanding. Savannah is in a sensitive stage right now. I read online. It could be burnout. As her sister, you should support her." I laughed out loud. Burnout from watching Netflix 16 hours a day? That stopped the conversation cold. The air in the kitchen grew heavier than before. My mom didn't say another word. She quietly pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it toward me. "An advance for this month's food. I think you could transfer. About $5,000 just in case anything extra comes up." I opened the envelope. Inside was a breakdown of expenses: electricity, water, organic milk, Korean skincare, and a reward for Savannah for maintaining emotional stability. "What is this?" I looked up, throat dry. Mom replied matter-of-factly, "Oh, I set aside a little from what you send to buy her things she likes. Don't you see she's much happier now?" I stood, pushing the chair back so hard it screeched against the wooden floor. You used my money to reward Savannah for doing absolutely nothing. Dad walked in from the living room at the sound. Still in his old button-up shirt, holding a glass of water, he nodded as Mom explained everything like I was the one overreacting. She helps out, he said. She does the dishes, sometimes even makes coffee for your mom. I stood there in stunned silence. Making coffee is helping out? And what about me? I wake up at 6 a.m., drive almost 2 hours round trip, do the taxes, pay the bills, and clean the house while everyone's asleep. Savannah still didn't look up. You talk like you're the only victim in the universe. I turned to her, looked straight at her, and for the first time I realized she didn't feel guilty at all. She had been pampered so long. She truly believed that my sacrifice was her entitlement. I turned to my mother and asked bluntly, "Have you ever thought of asking Savannah to get a job? The cafe down the street is hiring." Mom snapped like I had just insulted her pride. You talk like you're throwing her out on the street. She's been through enough already. You just want to make me look like a failure, huh? Savannah cut in. You always think you're better than everyone else just because you have a job. I took a deep breath, forcing myself not to yell. It's not about being better. At least I'm not freeloading and I know how to be grateful. The air froze. No one said another word. I walked upstairs, the door closing behind me with a thud that echoed like a hammer in my chest. That night, I didn't sleep. I realized something terrifying. I had unknowingly created a pattern of dependence for this whole family, and they had adapted to it far better than I ever imagined. None of them wanted to change because I was too perfect a lifeline to let go, and so I began to think seriously. If I didn't make the first change, no one else ever would. I first noticed something was off when I no longer heard Savannah's flip-flops scraping the floor in the mornings. The kitchen, usually filled with the sound of tick-tock from her phone, was now oddly silent. At first, I thought she was just in her room, but by the third day of not seeing her at all, I asked Mom. She was slicing fruit in the kitchen, voice airy. She's away for a few days. Needed a change of scenery. I stopped mid-step. Away? Where to? Oh, I think Maui. She said a friend gifted her a flight and hotel. I stared at her like she was telling a joke. Who gifted someone a $1,000 Hawaii trip? Mom shrugged. I was surprised too, but Savannah's always been lucky, always has. That answer choked me. I didn't ask more, just went back to my room, but my mind was racing. Savannah didn't have close friends. She didn't work. No one, just gifts. A several $1,000 trip out of nowhere. 2 days later, while at work, I got a call from my credit card company. Hello, I'm calling from the transaction monitoring department for American Gold. We've noticed some unusual activity on your card over the past 4 days. I frowned. What kind of charges? I hardly use that card. In the last 4 days, the total spending has been around $17,800. Charges include high-end restaurants, fashion boutiques in Waikiki, spa services, and a private helicopter island tour. I froze. I hung up, opened the banking app, and the list of transactions scrolled across the screen like a bad comedy sketch. Louis Vuitton, $3,200. Umaka Sushi, $980. Helicopter tour, $2,600. Beachfront hotel, $4,500. I called Savannah immediately. After a few rings, her familiar drowsy voice answered. Hello? Why are you calling now? Where are you? Hi, what's up? You're using my credit card, aren't you? Silence for a beat. Then she chuckled. Oh, the gold one. You left it in your desk drawer. Isn't that what it's for? Emergencies? I clenched the phone. You took it without asking. You've spent nearly 20 grand. What were you thinking? You're overreacting. I didn't use it for anything bad, just a vacation, a little relaxation. We're family, right? Don't be stingy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You misunderstood. Being family doesn't give you the right to steal someone's money. She casually replied. I was going to buy something for Mom and Dad. Think of it as me being thoughtful for all of us. I was speechless. Before I could say more, she hung up. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the phone screen, reading each transaction she'd charged under my name. I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back by someone who used to call me my favorite sister on every birthday. I contacted the bank immediately, had the card locked, and requested an investigation for unauthorized use. The next morning, Savannah messaged me on iMessage. Cards blocked. I was trying to book a zip line and it got declined. What did you do? I didn't respond. She followed up. Come on, I'll pay you back. Chill. It's not like you've never splurged either. Still, I said nothing. That afternoon, I got home and found Mom standing at the front door, eyes puffy, face tight with worry. Olivia, did you block the card? Savannah said you went too far. She's stranded in Hawaii without money to eat. I dropped my bag and answered flatly. She used my card without consent. That's illegal. Mom's voice shook. Couldn't you have cut her some slack? She's your sister. I looked at her, tone calm but sharp. And I'm your daughter, the one working 60 hours a week to keep this house running. Yet no one here asks if I'm okay. Mom said nothing, just lowered her head, her hands trembling slightly. I walked upstairs, heart heavy. But deep down, I knew the game had changed. I would no longer let anyone treat me like their personal ATM. The next morning, before I could even grab breakfast, my parents were already waiting in the living room, faces tense and bitter, as if they were the ones who had been betrayed. Olivia, my mom began, her voice falsely grave. Savannah is panicking out there. She has no money. Her phone battery is dying, and the hotel is demanding additional payment. Why did you block the card without warning? I crossed my arms, leaned against the doorframe, and kept my voice steady. I didn't need to give notice for something that was clearly wrong. My dad growled, "She's your sister. This is when she needs help, not to be abandoned in a crisis." I looked him straight in the eye. I didn't abandon anyone. She used my credit card without permission, spent nearly $20,000 and didn't ask once. I simply put a stop to it. My mom shook her head and sank into the couch. What you did is like cutting off her lifeline. Everything in Hawaii is expensive. You didn't consider the consequences. I couldn't hold back anymore. Oh, I considered the consequences, Mom. I thought about how I sweated for 3 months just to pay off the debts that you and Savannah created together. I thought about the nights I ate instant noodles to save money to send home, while Savannah scrolled her phone looking for Michelin-starred restaurants to check into. The room went silent. Then my mom spoke again, this time softer, a mix of complaint and guilt. If only you were a little more gentle. If you thought about other people's feelings. I cut her off. Other people's feelings? What about mine? Have either of you ever asked if I'm okay? If I can handle all this? No one answered. I sighed, pulled out my phone, scrolled to Savannah's voice message from the night before and played it on speaker. You're so stingy, I can't even enjoy one vacation in peace. Your mom was just a low-paid worker too. Stop acting like you're some big deal. Your pathetic little paycheck doesn't make you special. The entire room fell silent. I held my gaze on my mother. In her eyes I saw confusion, then shock, and finally something bitter and raw. Dad turned away, gripping his coffee mug so tightly his knuckles went white. Unbelievable. She really said that? I went on. That's the real voice of the girl you've been defending for years, the one you always said was sensitive, who deserved understanding, the one you called me cold for not coddling. Mom bowed her head, silent for a long time. Then hoarsely she said, "She lied to us. She said she only used the card to buy things for the family. She said she was getting souvenirs." I laughed, cold and sharp. Want to hear some transactions? Jewelry store, $1,800. Full body spa 2 days ago, over $700. Very important person helicopter tour around the island, $2,600. So, which one was for you, Mom? The pearl necklace or the massage voucher? My dad stood up abruptly and marched into the bedroom. I heard the sound of rummaging, drawers opening, papers flipping. A few minutes later, he came back with a stack of papers in hand. My card. There were 2 cash withdrawals. Who did this? I stood still, said nothing. Mom rushed to check her purse. Moments later, her voice shook. My supplementary card. Over $300 is gone. The truth was now plain as day. Savannah hadn't just used my card. She had quietly taken the details of all 3 of us and spent like she was living some luxurious fantasy. The air in the house turned suffocating. I could feel the collapse settling into every breath. Mom gripped my hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Olivia, I didn't know. I'm so sorry." I didn't reply. I pulled out my phone, headed slowly upstairs, and said as I walked, "Don't apologize. It won't change anything. There's only one thing left to do now. Let Savannah deal with the consequences herself." I didn't sleep that night. The numbers from the credit card statement danced in my mind like a fever. But strangely, within the chaos, Everything felt clearer than ever. This family didn't need another lecture. They needed a wake-up call. And this time, I was going to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. The next morning, I made coffee, prepared breakfast, and sat at the table waiting like nothing had happened. "I've thought it over," I said as Mom placed a plate of eggs in front of me. I realized maybe I was a bit too rigid. After all, Savannah is my sister. Mom's head shot up, eyes wide with hope. "Really? I knew you wouldn't abandon her." I smiled. I found an old supplementary credit card. One Savannah opened back when she worked at the makeup store. It's still active and unused. I could load some money onto it just this once. Dad nodded. His tone softened. "That's good. Keeping the peace is what matters most." And I continued. "I also booked flights for us to visit Savannah. If she's truly in crisis, we should be there to support her." Mom looked like she was about to cry. "Oh, Olivia, you're such a thoughtful daughter." I turned away, hiding the slow smile forming on my face. I had booked round-trip tickets for the three of us, my parents and me, but mine was refundable. The trip would last 5 days, just enough. That afternoon, they packed their luggage. Mom fussed over which maxi dress to bring. Dad dug out his old straw hat from the closet. No one noticed me quietly opening the filing cabinet, pulling out a slim folder clipped together. It was the property deed for the house under my name. Last year, when Dad couldn't pay the property taxes, I had quietly paid them with the condition that the house be transferred to me so we wouldn't lose it to foreclosure. He signed without reading the fine print, desperate just to keep a place to come back to. Well, that place wasn't theirs anymore. The next day, after their plane took off, I called Taylor, an old college friend who now worked in real estate in Austin. "I need to sell the house in Round Rock. Big lot, great location. Can we close in 3 days at the right price? 2 days, tops." I sent over the info. That night, Taylor messaged me. "Got a buyer, deposits in. They'll take possession Saturday." Perfect. The next morning, I hired a moving service, packed everything I owned and anything of value, and sent it to a small apartment I had already picked near my office. It was bright, quiet, and most importantly, no one knew the address. 3 days later, I signed the house sale papers at the real estate office. Everything went smoothly. I held the check in my hand with no hesitation. That afternoon, I placed a wooden sign in front of the old house. In bold red paint, it read, "Sold. No visitors from relatives." On the 5th day, their flight landed. I picked them up at the airport myself. Savannah came out first, wearing oversized sunglasses and pulling a Coach suitcase. "You really came to pick me up? I thought you were still mad." I gave her a soft smile. "Let's get home and talk." As we turned down the familiar street, my mother frowned from the back seat. "Wait, what's that sign out front?" I stopped the car in front of the house. All three of them saw the sign at once. Savannah's mouth dropped open. My father jumped out and ran to the door, but a middle-aged man in a suit opened it. "Sorry, who are you?" he asked. My father blinked. "This is my house. I just bought it from a woman named Olivia Brown. She signed the sale papers 3 days ago." They all turned to me. My mother's eyes went wide. "Olivia, you sold the house?" I smiled. "Not the house. My house. And yes, I sold it," Savannah shrieked. "Are you insane? Where are we supposed to live now?" I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Did the delivery arrive?" I asked the person on the other end. "Good. Drop them off at the address." Silence fell. I turned toward them, my voice like a breeze. "Enjoy your stay at the new place. Grandma's waiting." And she said, "No one gets to slack off anymore." My father stood frozen at the gate, pale. My mother clutched her suitcase, eyes darting between the sold sign and me, as if hoping I'd say it was just a cruel joke. "You can't do this, Olivia. This is our home," she cried. Calmly, I replied, "That home was the place where I paid for everything while you all spent like I was an unlimited ATM." Savannah flung off her sunglasses. "You've lost your mind. You think you're so clever? Selling the house and leaving us on the street." I opened the trunk and pulled out an envelope, holding it in front of her. "Not the street. Here's your new address." They all looked down. In neat print, it read, "Recipient Margaret Brown. Brown's Table Family Diner, San Antonio." Savannah screamed, "No, not there. I'm not going to Grandma's." I raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "Grandma's been saying she wanted to see everyone, and she's thrilled to have help in the kitchen, cleaning, waiting tables." My mother gasped. Olivia, you know I don't get along with her. You've always known. I know, I cut in. Because she expects people to work and take responsibility. Then I turned to Savannah. As for your Hawaii trip, every charge was made on your old credit card, the one you opened 3 years ago when you worked part-time at Sephora. You quit and forgot about it. I didn't. Savannah's face went white. No way. I loaded it with cash so you could spend freely, I said with a tilted smile. But the remaining balance of $23,000, that's yours to deal with now. My mother screamed. She can't pay that, you know that. I shrugged slowly. Then it's best you all start working hard at Grandma's diner. My father stared at me, eyes red, voice. You really want to drag your family to rock bottom? I didn't scream. I wasn't angry. I just said in the most hollow voice I've ever used, no one dragged anyone. This is the result of your own choices. The rental truck pulled up beside us. The driver stepped out. You, Olivia? I'm taking them to San Antonio, right? I nodded. Yes. Please be careful with the suitcase marked in red. That one has the kitchen tools. Savannah wailed. You can't make me live with Grandma. She wakes up at 5 a.m. and makes you knead dough by hand. I looked at her colder than I'd ever been. I've been waking up at 5 a.m. for 2 years to cook breakfast, pay off debt, and cover insurance for this family. You can handle a few weeks. My parents said nothing. They climbed into the truck with their luggage and blank stares. I stood by with my phone in hand. As the truck pulled away, I called Grandma. They're on their way. Grandma Margaret's voice came through firm and sharp. Good. Dough's already prepped. Your mother's doing the register. Savannah's on dish duty. Your father, I think he'll peel potatoes. I couldn't help but let out a quiet laugh. Are you really planning to treat them like regular staff? No, I'm planning to treat them more strictly than regular staff. It's time they learn what it means to live without depending on others. Thank you, Grandma, I said, my voice trembling with real emotion. You don't need to thank me, you just need to rest. And remember, if you ever feel weak, don't forget you're not alone anymore. I hung up and looked at the Texas sky glowing gently in the early summer sun. What I felt inside wasn't a burden anymore, but something light, almost weightless. 2 weeks after my family moved to San Antonio, Grandma called me on a Saturday evening. Her voice was clear, carrying exhaustion, but also something triumphant. Olivia, she said, you don't need to send more canned food or vitamins. Everyone here is getting enough exercise to stay healthy now. I smiled. How's Savannah doing? She complained about back pain on day 3. I told her it was from holding a phone more than a broom. But today, she washed dishes for nearly 3 hours without a word. That's progress. I hung up and sat by the window in my new apartment. It was small but filled with light. No shouting, no doors slamming out of spite, just soft music and the quiet scent of herbal tea in the air. In the weeks that followed, I kept receiving short updates from Grandma. My dad got scolded for burning a pizza crust. My mom had to learn how to count change on register duty. Savannah got yelled at by a customer for spilling water on the menu. I didn't reply often, but I quietly took it all in. Not out of satisfaction, but because I wanted to see if their change was real. Then, one afternoon in October, just after I wrapped up a video meeting, my phone rang, a known number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Olivia. The voice was quiet, but I knew it right away. It was Savannah. I paused for a few seconds before replying. Yeah. Can we meet? Not for money. I don't want anything. I just want to talk. I hadn't responded yet when she added quickly. At the coffee shop by the central bus station. Sunday, 3 p.m. If you don't come, I understand. I arrived almost 10 minutes early. Sitting in a familiar corner of the cafe, I realized my heart was beating faster than usual. At exactly 3 p.m., the door opened. Savannah walked in with no makeup, no oversized sunglasses, no tight dresses or heels, just a young woman in a slightly wrinkled white shirt and faded jeans. She scanned the room and found me. Her gaze no longer held defiance or arrogance. It reminded me of when we were kids, when she'd spill ink on my homework and mutter an apology. You really came. She sat down, hands clasped under the table. I don't know where to start. Maybe by saying, I'm sorry. I stayed quiet, letting her speak. When I first got to Grandma's, I thought I could fake it, pretend to be hardworking for a few weeks. But waking up at 4:30 every morning, scrubbing the lobby while customers were still eating lunch, I realized nobody bowed to me anymore. No one said I was pretty. No one did things for me. Her voice trembled. I never knew a person could feel that tired, but that's when I started to understand what it must have been like for you, all those years being taken for granted. I looked up and saw Savannah's eyes, red and glassy but steady. I've already paid off nearly $6,000, she said, pulling out an envelope. From splitting my paycheck every month. It might take me a few years, but I won't stop. I owe you more than just money. I looked at the envelope but didn't reach for it. My hand rested on my warm coffee mug. Savannah, I said slowly, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to see clearly and keep walking on your own 2 feet. She nodded. I won't go back to who I was. I promise. For a while, we just sat in silence, but it wasn't heavy anymore. No tension, no one performing a role. I finally picked up the envelope and placed it in my bag. Then I looked at her and softened my voice. All right, starting today, let's never speak of Hawaii again. Savannah laughed, and this time, it didn't sound forced. At the end of December, when Christmas lights started appearing across Austin, I got an unexpected call from Grandma. Olivia, come to San Antonio for dinner this year, she said as casually as ever, but I knew she never invited twice. I paused. It had been almost 8 months since I'd put my family in that moving van. 8 months without a single family dinner. 8 months of learning to breathe without anyone's expectations, demands, or indifference. I'll be there, I replied quietly, smiling. That afternoon, I brought a box of homemade waffle cookies and stood in front of Brown's table at exactly 5 p.m. The old wooden door still had the tiny bell at the top, the same one that used to make me laugh as a kid because it jingled every time someone walked in, like in an old movie. I pushed the door open. The scent of flour, warm cheese, and basil hit me straight in the chest. On the wall opposite the cashier's counter, the photo of Grandma in her younger days making pastries still hung neatly among the family pictures. My dad was the first to see me. He untied the apron around his waist and quickly walked toward me. Olivia, he said, his voice low and raspy. I gave him a nod. Hi, Dad. He stood silently for a moment, then quietly said, Thank you for not blocking my number. I looked into his eyes, now etched with deeper lines. And in that moment, I knew he was no longer the man who used to sit reading the newspaper all day, while leaving everything to his daughter. His hands, now visibly calloused, told the story. My mom came out next, still holding a tray of tiramisu. She hesitated, then stepped forward and gently hugged me. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice catching. I didn't hug her back right away, but I didn't pull away either. And maybe for her that was enough. Dinner that night was simple. Wood-fired pizza, butternut squash soup, and a slice of Grandma's apple tart. We all sat around the long oak table in the back of the restaurant, the one Grandma used to use for birthday parties when we were kids. Savannah sat across from me. No dresses, no makeup, just the little sister who used to bring her pillow to my room during thunderstorms. I used to really hate you, she said with a soft smile, continuing to spoon her soup. But now I'm grateful. If you hadn't done what you did, we'd still be living in a fantasy. I looked around the table. Dad's humble expression, Mom's hands thinner than I remembered, Grandma's deep crow's feet that still framed a bright gaze. I didn't cry, but something stuck in my throat. Not anger, not hurt anymore, just lightness. After dinner, Grandma pulled me into the back garden where the herb pots were still lush under the soft yellow lights. You did so well, she said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. You learned how to protect yourself. That's what I always hoped you'd learn. But Olivia, she continued, her voice slower, firmer, strength is important, but the kindness you carry in your heart is your most precious gift. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, letting the cool breeze brush my cheek, letting myself soften. A few weeks later, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a handwritten card, the familiar handwriting unmistakable. Dear Olivia, I made another $2,000 payment this time, about $15,000 left to go. I'm not giving up. But if one day you feel like having hot chocolate with me like we used to when we were little, just call your sister. Savannah. I held the card for a long time, not because of the numbers, but because of that final sentence. And I knew then that family isn't the place where you'll never get hurt. Family is where you're strong enough to forgive when they're brave enough to change and come back. Olivia's story proves that compassion doesn't mean submission, and love shouldn't become a burden. In real life, too many people get used to sacrificing without remembering they also deserve respect. But when we draw boundaries and live honestly with our feelings and needs, it isn't selfish, it's healing. Sometimes distance is what teaches others to grow. And sometimes forgiveness doesn't begin with words, but with a silence full of strength.